Hi guys, in this episode of Shri series, we're going to do some questions involving parallel and perpendicular lines in relevance to y is equal to mx plus c, which is the equation of a straight line. All right. Now, before I go any further into answering this question, I wanted us to do a brief theory on what parallel and perpendicular lines are. Now, if you looked at one of my videos, we talked about what parallel and perpendicular lines are. However, it doesn't hurt by going through a bit briefly before we attempt this question. All right. So let me firstly draw a straight line here, a simple sketch of a straight line. That's my y, that's my x, and let's draw two parallel lines. All right, now like I said before, this is a sketch. All right, what I want you to understand is that parallel lines don't meet. All right, now let's say that these two parallel lines have the gradient m1 and m2, and like I said, when you want to find out the difference between parallel and perpendicular lines, you need to answer the question with reference or with respect to the gradient. All right, so in parallel lines, your gradients are the same. So in other words, parallel lines have the same gradient. All right, now let's look at an illustration of perpendicular lines. So just another sketch like the other one before to my right, and let's look at how perpendicular lines work. So when you think of perpendicular, all right, so the word perpendicular means two lines meeting at right angles. They meet at 90 degrees. All right, so two lines are perpendicular when the product of their gradients is equal to -1. I'll illustrate this. Suppose this line has a gradient of m1 and this line has a gradient of m2. Therefore, when you multiply m1 and m2, you're going to get -1. All right, so when you get m1 and m2 and times them, their product is equal to -1. And that's how you differentiate between parallel and perpendicular. All right, you got to look at their gradients. Parallel lines have the same gradient, and perpendicular lines have the product of their gradients as equal to -1. All right, with that in mind, let's attempt this question. So I'll just rub this. All right, I've just script over that. All right, so let's look at this question. Find the equation of the line that is parallel to y is equal to -2x minus 7 and passes through 1,9. All right, so what key information do I need to highlight? All right, so what I've got here is I've got the fact that this line is parallel, and that is the equation of that line. Y is equal to -2x minus 7, and it's passing through the point 1,9. All right, so if you remember, the first thing we need to do is ask ourselves, is this equation written in the form y is equal to mx plus c? All right, so a bit of a background. What is the equation of a straight line? Equation of a straight line is y is equal to mx plus c. And what is my m? My m's my gradient. And what's my c? My c is my y-intercept. That's the point where the line cuts the y-axis. I did give a brief explanation in what is the equation of a straight line in my previous video, but it doesn't hurt to go through this once more. All right, so equation of a straight line is y is equal to mx plus c, where m's my gradient and c is my y-intercept. All right, so for beginners, what I normally encourage students to do for easy understanding is I like to write this equation in the form y is equal to mx plus c. All right, so what we've got here is y is equal to -2x minus 7. And if you look at that, you can easily see that my m is equal to -2 and my c is equal to -7. So what we've got here, m is equal to -2 and c is equal to -7. All right. However, this is just for extra information. The key is to find your gradient. All right. And what do we know about parallel lines? Parallel lines have the same gradient. So what we need to do is we need to find another equation all right, that is parallel, which has exactly the same gradient as -2, but in this case, it's passing through the points 1, 9, all right? So what I would do is I would write another equation, y is equal to mx plus c, all right? And this time what I'm going to do is in place of m, I'm going to put -2 because parallel lines have the same gradients. In place of x, I'm going to put 1, and in place of y, I'm going to put 9 to get c. All right, as you guys know very well from your basic coordinates, that's how you write down your coordinates. You write down first with your x coordinate followed by your y coordinate. So x is equal to 1 and y is equal to 9. All right, so let's substitute these numbers here. So what is my y? 9. And what is my m? -2. And what is my x? 1 plus c. So 9 is equal to -2 plus c. And basic linear equations, c is equal to 11. All right, now do we end there? We found out what the gradient is and we found out what the y-intercept is. So therefore your final equation, all right, is now going to be y is equal to -2x plus 11. That is going to be your final answer because that is the equation. That is the equation that is parallel to this line but passes through 1, 9. All right, so what we needed to do was to find the gradient, which was -2, and because it's parallel, so this other line will have a gradient of -2, and then we substitute in place of x, we're going to put 1, and in place of y, we're going to put 9, and we work out to get c, and c is equal to 11, and then we finally write the equation y is equal to -2x plus c. All right, so that's how you solve a simple question involving parallel lines involving a straight line. All right, let's look at the other question that I've prepared here. All right, so if you look at this question, let's read it out. Find the equation of the straight line that is perpendicular to y is equal to 3 over 4x minus 1 and passes through 3, -2. All right, so in this question, we've got an equation of a line that is perpendicular. In the previous question, it was parallel. All right, so let's look at key important information. This line's parallel, that's my equation, and it's passing through the point 3, -2. All right, so let's write down the equation of a straight line. Y is equal to mx plus c, and you look at this equation, y is equal to 3 over 4x minus 1. All right, so what can we look from here? We've got our gradient as 3 over 4 and my y-intercept as -1. If this line was parallel, the gradient of the other line would be 3 over 4. However, it's perpendicular. So what happens with gradients when two lines are perpendicular? If you remember this formula, m1 m2 equals -1, and let's assume this is m1. So what we're going to do is we're going to go 3 over 4 m2 equals -1, and if you remember the rule, the new gradient of this line is going to be -4 over 3. So here's a trick that I normally tell students is if you've got one gradient of a line and you want to find the gradient of the other line, provided that both lines are gradients, all you got to do is swap and put a negative number. So what we've done here is we've got 3 over 4. So therefore your other gradient's going to be negative, but then you swap your reciprocal. So in other words, when you swap them, what's going to happen is when you multiply them together, you're going to get -1. All right, so that's how you work that out. So the gradient of this new line is -4 over 3. All right, so what we do here is, use blue here, y is equal to mx plus c, and in place of y we're going to put -2, and in place of x we are going to put 3. All right, so what is y? -2, and what is x? -4 over 3 times 3, which is x plus c. All right, so -2 is equal to, that cancels out, -4 plus c. Therefore my y-intercept all right, in this case is going to be negative 2 plus 4, which is 2. All right, now if you remember your basic understanding of linear equations, which I did put up in the previous posts on Shri series, we move this on the other side and therefore C is equal to 2. Now, are we done? We're not yet done. We need to do one final process, which is to write the final equation, y is equal to mx plus c. We're going to put m as negative 4 over 3, and we're going to put c as 2. All right, so therefore my equation is going to be y is equal to negative 4 over 3x plus 2. That's how you write down your answer. And that is your equation of a line that is perpendicular to y is equal to 3 over 4x minus 1. All right. Now, key things you need to know. So I'll start with this question. You need to understand what happens in perpendicular lines in terms of their gradients. As you know very well, perpendicular lines have the products of their gradients as negative 1. So if you look at this equation, you write it down, y is equal to mx plus c. You find out what m is and you find out what c is, and then you work out what is the other gradient. All right. Now, if you've got one gradient as a fraction, for example, you swap and then you put a negative number. All right. And that's how you work that out. Now, sometimes you might get negative 4 over 3 and you want to find out what's the gradient of the other line. All right. All you need to do is swap them and it becomes positive. So 3 over 4. And that's, you can see, you can get a reverse of the answers, and then you put your x value and your y value as seen here to get c, and then finally you put m and your y-intercept to do this question. Now, few things you got to remember, guys, is that if you don't know how to substitute, this question is going to be hard. If you don't know your basic linear equations, this is going to be hard. So if you need information on linear equations, I have put some videos on how to solve linear equations on Shri series. All right. That's what you need to understand. So these are types of questions where, like I said before, in order for you to answer a question, you need to have required prior knowledge or learning in order to attempt these questions right here. So in a nutshell, parallel lines have the same gradient as seen here. Just go back to the other question. There you go. So parallel lines, see here, have the same gradient. So m is negative 2 and m is negative 2 here, and then we substitute it. All right. So the difference between the previous question and this question, technically, from here to here were the same. The only change is how the gradients differ. In parallel, it's the same. In perpendicular, the product is negative 1, and then you substitute to get to the answer, to get your gradient and your y-intercept. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye now.